Cowboy forced to marry a black woman 20 years older to cover debt. She was worth everything. The foreclosure notice trembled in Ryder Cassidy's calloused hands, 24 years old and already a failure. His father's ranch would be gone by week's end, swallowed by gambling debts that seemed to multiply like prairie weeds. Victor Harrington's polished boots clicked against the saloon floor as he approached Ryder's table. The land baron's silver mustache twitched with amusement at the young cowboy's desperation. Harrington slid into the opposite chair. His cold eyes studied Ryder like a predator sizing up wounded prey. The older man's proposal came without preamble or sympathy. Marriage. To Serafina Jenkins. The debt would vanish like morning mist. Ryder knew the name. Every rancher in 3 counties knew Serafina Jenkins owned the largest cattle operation in Wyoming Territory. What he didn't understand was why Harrington cared about his worthless hide, or why any woman would want a broken-down cowboy as a husband. The ride to Serafina's ranch stretched across rolling hills dotted with the finest livestock Ryder had ever seen. Fence posts stood straight and strong. Gates hung perfectly balanced. Everything spoke of precision and prosperity. Ryder expected to meet a desperate woman clinging to fading fortune. Instead, Serafina Jenkins greeted him from the porch of a sprawling ranch house that rivaled any mansion back east. Her posture radiated quiet authority. Her dark eyes measured him with the same calculating intelligence he'd seen in successful businessmen. She spoke to her ranch hands in fluent Spanish, then switched to what sounded like French with a visiting cattle buyer. Her ledgers lay open on a nearby table, filled with neat columns of figures that told stories of remarkable success. The courthouse wedding drew stares and whispers from every corner of Dusty Creek. Sheriff Amos Blackwood made his disapproval known through narrowed eyes and muttered comments about keeping watch on unnatural arrangements. His badge caught the light as he leaned against the courthouse wall, arms crossed in obvious hostility. Only Nettie Lewis offered genuine congratulations. The seamstress squeezed Serafina's hands and ignored the townspeople's shocked expressions. Her warm smile provided the only bright spot in an otherwise cold ceremony. Ryder moved his few possessions into the ranch's guest quarters. Serafina maintained clear boundaries between their living spaces and expectations. Their arrangement was business, nothing more. That evening, Ryder overheard Serafina confiding in Nettie about her secret financing of the town's school repairs and widow assistance fund. The conversation revealed stakes far higher than one woman's ranch. If Serafina lost her land, the entire community's hidden support system would crumble. Sheriff Blackwood's threats suddenly carried more weight. The anonymous letters arriving daily promised consequences for challenging the natural order. Ryder began to understand he'd stumbled into something much larger than his own small problems. Dawn broke over Serafina's ranch with the precision of a military operation. Her ranch hands moved with practiced efficiency, following systems that maximized every resource. Ryder watched from his window as she directed the morning routine with quiet gestures and minimal words. His first day of actual work revealed the gap between his cowboy swagger and her scientific approach. Where Ryder would drive cattle with shouting and rope work, Serafina used carefully planned rotational grazing that preserved grasslands. Her breeding program relied on detailed genetic records rather than guesswork. The other hands respected her methods. They followed her lead without question, understanding that her success meant their steady paychecks. Ryder felt like a child playing at ranching while adults handled real business. Serafina's water conservation system impressed him most. She had engineered a network of channels and reservoirs that captured every drop of precious rainfall. Her cattle always had clean water while neighboring ranches struggled during dry spells. Her office contained maps, weather charts, and market reports that painted a picture of careful planning extending months into the future. Nothing happened by chance on Serafina's ranch. Every decision served a larger strategy. Within a week, Sheriff Blackwood began his campaign in earnest. He visited neighboring ranchers with carefully chosen words about property values and community standards. The sheriff never issued direct threats, but his meaning came through clearly. Tom Morrison was the first to break. His ranch bordered Serafina's eastern pasture, and he'd always maintained friendly business relations with her. Morrison's wife found him pacing their kitchen one morning, muttering about pressure from town and what was best for their children's future. Morrison canceled his standing order for Serafina's prize bulls. His excuse about changing breeding programs fooled no one. The message spread faster than wildfire across the ranching community. Anonymous letters arrived at Serafina's mailbox with increasing frequency. The handwriting varied, but the sentiments remained consistent. Threats about disturbing natural order and warnings about consequences for stepping outside proper boundaries filled page after page. Serafina read each letter calmly, then filed them in a wooden box without comment. Her composure never cracked, but Ryder noticed how her shoulders tensed when she collected the mail each morning. The fence cutting started during the second week of their marriage. Someone slipped onto the property during the darkest hours and opened strategic gaps that sent cattle wandering onto neighboring land. The damage required hours of repair work and created conflicts with other ranchers about livestock recovery. Ryder joined the night patrols, but the saboteurs proved too clever to catch. They knew the land well enough to move without detection and chose locations that caused maximum disruption with minimal effort. Local merchants began refusing Serafina's business under various pretenses. The feed store claimed supply shortages when she needed grain. The blacksmith suddenly had no time for her horseshoeing requests. The general store owner developed a suspicious inability to stock items she regularly purchased. Each rejection came with awkward explanations and averted eyes. These were people who had accepted her money gladly for years. Now they acted as if her presence contaminated their establishments. Ryder watched Serafina maintain her dignity through each humiliation. She never raised her voice or demanded explanations. Instead, she simply nodded and sought alternatives that often proved more expensive and time-consuming. The railroad boycott struck the killing blow to her immediate finances. The Western Pacific had purchased her cattle exclusively for 3 years, recognizing the superior quality of her livestock. When their representative arrived to cancel all future contracts, he at least had the grace to look ashamed. The cancellation left Serafina with hundreds of prime cattle and no immediate buyer. Smaller operations couldn't handle her volume, and distant markets meant transportation costs that eliminated profits. Her cash flow dried up overnight despite her substantial assets. Ryder found her in the office late one evening, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. She was writing letters to potential buyers in Colorado and Nebraska, seeking new markets to replace the lost railroad contract. Her pen moved steadily across the paper, each word carefully chosen. The next morning brought Sheriff Blackwood himself to their front door. He wore his badge prominently and carried official-looking papers that he claimed authorized him to investigate irregularities in property ownership. His eyes swept across the ranch buildings with obvious satisfaction. Blackwood's questions focused on the legal validity of their marriage and whether Serafina truly owned the mineral rights beneath her land. He suggested that certain territorial laws might not recognize unions that violated community standards. His tone remained professional, but his intent was clear. After the sheriff departed, Serafina sat on her porch for a long time. The afternoon sun cast shadows across the land she had built into an empire through years of careful work. Everything she had created now faced systematic destruction by people who resented her success. Ryder realized his own problems had been small compared to what Serafina faced daily. His gambling debts and lost ranch seemed insignificant next to her battle against an entire system designed to tear her down. She fought not just for herself, but for every person who depended on her hidden generosity. That night, he heard her speaking quietly with Nettie on the front porch. Their conversation revealed the true scope of what hung in the balance. Without Serafina's support, the community's most vulnerable members would lose their only safety net. The stakes had become clear. This was war. The attack came on a moonless Thursday night when storm clouds blocked the stars. Ryder woke to the sound of cattle lowing in distress and hoofbeats thundering across the eastern pasture. This wasn't random fence cutting or petty sabotage. Professional rustlers were making their move. He pulled on his boots and grabbed his rifle without hesitation. The chaos outside revealed at least 6 mounted figures driving Serafina's prize breeding stock toward the canyon pass. These men moved with military precision, using hand signals and coordinated positions that spoke of extensive planning. Serafina emerged from the main house carrying a Winchester and wearing a determined expression. Her ranch hands rallied quickly, but the rustlers had chosen their timing perfectly. Most of the men were scattered across distant sections of the vast property. Ryder's instincts kicked in with startling clarity. His eyes tracked the rustlers' escape route, while his mind calculated angles and timing. The familiar weight of tactical thinking settled over him like a comfortable coat he hadn't worn in 3 years. Instead of charging directly after the thieves, Ryder circled wide through the rocky terrain north of the canyon. His movements showed an understanding of pursuit tactics that went far beyond typical ranch work. He positioned himself at a choke point where the stolen herd would have to pass. The rustlers rode straight into his trap. Ryder's first shot took down the lead rider's horse, sending the man tumbling into the brush. His second shot shattered the lantern another rustler carried, plunging the group into confusion. The precision of his marksmanship revealed years of professional training. Within minutes, he had the entire gang pinned down in a narrow ravine with nowhere to run. His tactical positioning and calm commands to Serafina's arriving ranch hands demonstrated a level of expertise that stunned everyone present. This was no ordinary cowboy defending his temporary home. The captured rustlers proved more interesting than common cattle thieves. Their gear was too expensive, their horses too fine, and their coordination too practiced for random criminals. When Ryder searched their belongings, he found something that made his blood run cold. Sheriff Blackwood's personal seal marked several pieces of correspondence found in the lead rustler's saddlebags. The letters contained detailed maps of Serafina's property and specific instructions about which cattle to target. The connection was undeniable and damning. As dawn broke over the ranch, Ryder found himself unable to maintain his carefully constructed facade any longer. Serafina watched him examine the evidence with the methodical precision of a trained investigator. Her questions came quietly but persistently. The truth spilled out in fragments at first, then in a rushing confession that 3 years of hiding couldn't contain. Ryder Cassidy had been Detective Ryan Cassidy of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, until a corruption scandal destroyed his career and nearly cost him his life. His investigation into illegal land seizures across the Wyoming Territory had uncovered a network of corrupt officials working with private interests to defraud legitimate property owners. When he tried to expose the conspiracy, his own supervisors turned against him. Evidence disappeared, witnesses vanished, and false charges appeared in his official file. The gambling debts that supposedly forced him into marriage were fabricated records planted to discredit his testimony. His father's ranch had been targeted specifically because of Ryder's investigation. Even his exile to this remote corner of Wyoming hadn't ended the persecution. Harrington's marriage proposal suddenly made perfect sense. The land baron hadn't been offering charity to a desperate cowboy. He had been placing a trained detective exactly where investigative skills were most needed. The entire arrangement had been orchestrated to bring Ryder's talents to bear on Serafina's enemies. Serafina absorbed this revelation with the same calm intelligence she applied to every other challenge. Her respect for Ryder's abilities grew as she understood the scope of his expertise. The failed cowboy who couldn't manage basic ranch work was actually a skilled investigator whose methods could expose their enemies. Together, they examined the captured correspondence with new understanding. Blackwood's corruption extended far beyond harassment of one successful rancher. The sheriff was coordinating systematic fraud across multiple properties, using his badge to legitimize theft on a massive scale. The Rustler attack had been designed to create a crisis that would justify emergency seizure of Serafina's property. Blackwood could claim he was protecting stolen cattle while actually confiscating her entire operation under fraudulent legal pretenses. The plan showed sophisticated understanding of territorial law and property rights. Ryder's detective training revealed patterns in the evidence that painted a clear picture of organized crime. Bank records, property transfers, and witness testimonies would be needed to build an airtight case. The work would require patience and systematic investigation, but the foundation was already solid. For the first time since their forced marriage, Serafina looked at Ryder as a true partner rather than an inconvenient obligation. His hidden skills complemented her own strengths perfectly. Where she understood land, livestock, and business operations, he grasped legal procedures, evidence gathering, and criminal behavior. The captured rustlers provided additional leverage when properly questioned. Ryder's interrogation techniques, refined during years of detective work, extracted admissions that implicated Blackwood directly. Fear of federal prosecution loosened tongues that local intimidation had kept sealed. As the morning sun climbed higher, both Ryder and Serafina understood their situation had fundamentally changed. They were no longer victims of random persecution, fighting separate battles. They had become partners in exposing corruption that threatened the entire territory. The war was far from over, but now they had weapons to fight back. The bank's ultimatum arrived 3 days after the Rustler attack. Despite Serafina's substantial assets, the railroad boycott had created a cash flow crisis that threatened immediate foreclosure. Her lawyer's nervous expression revealed how quickly legal protections could evaporate when powerful interests aligned against her. Serafina sat at her desk, surrounded by financial documents that told the story of systematic economic warfare. Every revenue stream had been cut or compromised. Her cattle couldn't reach market, her credit had been mysteriously downgraded, and her business relationships had crumbled under coordinated pressure. The final blow came when Sheriff Blackwood rode up to the ranch house with an official escort and leather satchel full of legal papers. His triumphant smile suggested he believed victory was within reach. The documents he carried bore territorial seals and judicial signatures that appeared legitimate at first glance. Blackwood's claim was audacious in its scope and precision. He alleged that Serafina's mineral rights were invalid due to fraudulent surveys conducted during her original land acquisition. According to his paperwork, the territorial government was reclaiming subsurface rights across her entire property for public auction. The sheriff's evidence included geological surveys that contradicted Serafina's property boundaries and testimony from supposed experts who questioned the validity of her land claims. His case appeared methodical and thoroughly researched, designed to withstand legal challenge through sheer volume of supporting documentation. Serafina listened to Blackwood's presentation with growing amusement that puzzled both the sheriff and Ryder. Her calm demeanor suggested she possessed information that her accusers lacked. When Blackwood finished his lengthy recitation of charges, she simply nodded and asked him to wait while she gathered her response. She disappeared into her office and returned with a wooden chest that had been locked away in her private safe. The contents represented years of meticulous record-keeping that went far beyond typical ranch documentation. Maps, surveys, geological reports, and mineral assays filled every corner of the container. The first document she produced was a surveyor's certificate bearing the signature and seal of Colonel James Morrison, United States Army Corps of Engineers. The precision of the technical drawings and mathematical calculations immediately distinguished it from Blackwood's cruder forgeries. Every measurement had been verified multiple times using advanced engineering techniques. Serafina's voice carried quiet authority as she explained her qualifications to create such detailed documentation. Her late husband had been a Union Army engineer during the Civil War, tasked with mapping strategic territories across the expanding frontier. His expertise in cartography and geological survey had been legendary among his military colleagues. During the difficult years of Reconstruction, Colonel Morrison had recognized that his wife would need skills that couldn't be taken away by changing political winds or social prejudices. He spent countless hours teaching Serafina the intricate science of land surveying, from basic measurement techniques to complex mineral identification. The lessons had continued until his death from pneumonia in 1878. By then, Serafina had mastered every aspect of geological surveying and cartographic documentation. Her maps were more accurate than territorial government records because she had applied military-grade precision to civilian land claims. When she began acquiring property throughout the Wyoming Territory, Serafina conducted her own comprehensive surveys before making any purchases. Her investigations revealed that many parcels contained valuable mineral deposits that previous owners had missed. The cattle ranch was merely the visible portion of a much larger mining empire. Her secret wealth came from carefully managed copper, silver, and coal extraction operations scattered across multiple properties. The mining income far exceeded her cattle profits, but she maintained the ranch as a respectable front that drew less attention than obvious industrial success would have attracted. Blackwood's fraudulent surveys contained mathematical errors that Serafina identified within minutes of examination. His boundary calculations ignored established benchmarks. His geological assessments contradicted basic scientific principles, and his legal descriptions contained impossible geographic references that revealed the documents as forgeries. More damaging to the sheriff's case were Serafina's original territorial registration papers, signed by the same officials whose current representatives were attempting to invalidate her claims. The contradiction between past acceptance and present rejection exposed the political motivations behind the legal challenge. Her most devastating evidence came in the form of detailed mineral extraction records that proved her mining operations had been conducted with full territorial knowledge and tax compliance for nearly a decade. Government officials had collected substantial revenue from her enterprises while maintaining detailed documentation of her legitimate ownership. Ryder watched Serafina systematically dismantle Blackwood's case with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. Her technical knowledge surpassed that of most professional surveyors, while her business acumen had created an empire that operated completely within territorial law. The combination of her geological expertise and his investigative skills created an unbeatable partnership. Where Serafina could prove the scientific impossibility of Blackwood's claims, Ryder could demonstrate the criminal conspiracy behind the fraudulent documentation. Their complementary talents exposed corruption that neither could have tackled alone. Blackwood's confident demeanor crumbled as the scope of Serafina's evidence became clear. His carefully constructed legal case dissolved under examination by someone who understood territorial law, geological science, and documentation, standards better than his own supposed experts. The sheriff's retreat from the ranch marked a turning point in their struggle. For the first time, their enemies had overreached and exposed themselves to devastating counterattack. Serafina and Ryder possessed not just defensive evidence, but the foundation for a comprehensive legal offensive that could destroy the entire corruption network. The war had shifted decisively in their favor. The territorial courthouse in Cheyenne buzzed with unusual activity as word spread about the Jenkins case. Federal Judge Harrison Whitmore had arrived from Denver specifically to oversee proceedings that could expose corruption reaching the highest levels of Wyoming territorial government. His reputation for unwavering integrity made him the perfect choice for such sensitive matters. Serafina and Ryder arrived with 3 wagons full of evidence that represented years of meticulous documentation and weeks of intensive investigation. Her geological surveys, mineral extraction records, and property documentation filled dozens of leather portfolios organized with military precision. His detective work had uncovered the criminal network's operational details through systematic analysis of financial records and witness testimony. Sheriff Blackwood entered the courtroom flanked by territorial officials who had staked their careers on his version of events. Their confident bearing suggested they still believed political influence could overcome inconvenient evidence. The sheriff's supporters filled half the gallery, creating an atmosphere of intimidation designed to influence the proceedings. Judge Whitmore's opening statement established ground rules that immediately favored truth over politics. He announced that federal marshals would provide courthouse security, and that all evidence would be examined according to strict legal standards rather than territorial customs. His stern gaze swept across the courtroom, making clear that attempted intimidation would result in contempt charges. Serafina took the witness stand with calm dignity that impressed everyone present. Her testimony began with a detailed explanation of her surveying qualifications and the rigorous methods she had used to document her property claims. She spoke with the technical precision of a trained engineer, backing every statement with documentary evidence that silenced potential objections. Her geological surveys painted a comprehensive picture of Wyoming territorial mineral wealth that surpassed anything in official government records. The maps she had created using military-grade techniques revealed that territorial assessors had consistently undervalued properties while missing obvious mineral deposits. Her work exposed systematic incompetence or deliberate fraud in multiple government offices. The courtroom fell silent as Serafina methodically demolished every aspect of Blackwood's fraudulent case. His boundary calculations contained mathematical errors that any competent surveyor would have caught immediately. His geological assessments contradicted basic scientific principles that were well established in engineering literature. His legal descriptions referenced geographic features that did not exist in the specified locations. More devastating was her presentation of original territorial documents that directly contradicted current official positions. Government officials had previously accepted her surveys, collected taxes on her mining operations, and issued permits that recognized her legitimate ownership. The sudden reversal of these positions could only be explained by corruption or criminal conspiracy. Ryder's testimony revealed the criminal network's operational structure through careful analysis of financial records, correspondence, and witness statements. His detective training allowed him to trace money flows, identify communication patterns, and establish timelines that proved systematic fraud. The evidence he presented connected Blackwood to a web of corruption involving multiple territorial officials and private interests. The captured rustlers provided crucial testimony under federal protection that guaranteed their safety from local retaliation. Their admissions implicated Blackwood directly in planning the attack on Serafina's ranch and revealed the broader strategy of economic warfare designed to force fraudulent property seizures. Their detailed knowledge of the conspiracy filled gaps that documentary evidence had left unclear. Judge Whitmore's examination of the evidence proceeded with methodical thoroughness that left no room for political maneuvering. He questioned technical aspects of the geological surveys, verified the authenticity of government documents, and cross-referenced witness testimony against physical evidence. His legal expertise quickly distinguished legitimate claims from fraudulent accusations. The moment that transformed the entire proceedings came when Victor Harrington requested permission to address the court as a material witness. His appearance shocked everyone present, including Ryder and Serafina, who had not expected their original marriage broker to involve himself in legal proceedings. Harrington's testimony revealed the second major twist that recontextualized everything that had happened. He was not merely a land baron who had arranged their marriage of convenience. He was Serafina's secret business partner, who had invested heavily in her mining operations and shared profits from their legitimate enterprises for nearly 5 years. The marriage arrangement had been carefully orchestrated to place Ryder's investigative skills where they were most needed to protect their joint business interests. Harrington had recognized that Blackwood's corruption threatened not just Serafina's property, but the economic stability of the entire territorial mining industry. His reputation for ruthless business practices masked a pragmatic understanding that Serafina's success benefited everyone involved in legitimate territorial development. Harrington's financial records proved that Serafina's mining operations generated substantial tax revenue for territorial coffers, while providing employment for hundreds of workers across multiple counties. Her business empire supported economic growth that benefited the entire region through increased commerce, infrastructure development, and population growth. The federal court's verdict came swiftly once all evidence had been presented. Judge Whitmore found overwhelming proof of criminal conspiracy, fraud, and abuse of official authority that warranted immediate federal intervention. Sheriff Blackwood faced federal charges that would likely result in lengthy imprisonment and complete disgrace. All of Serafina's property rights received full federal validation, with additional protections against future harassment. The court ordered substantial financial restitution for damages caused by the illegal boycotts and harassment campaigns. More importantly, federal oversight would prevent similar corruption from threatening other legitimate property owners. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice prevailed through systematic presentation of truth rather than political maneuvering or violence. Serafina's vindication represented victory for everyone who believed in fair treatment under law regardless of social prejudices. Her first act following legal victory was establishing a territorial land rights advocacy office that would help other minority property owners protect their legitimate claims through proper documentation and legal representation. The transformation of Dusty Creek began within days of the federal court verdict. News of Serafina's vindication and Blackwood's disgrace spread across the Wyoming territory faster than wildfire, carrying with it a shift in social attitudes that seemed almost miraculous. The woman many had scorned now commanded respect that extended far beyond her considerable wealth. Tom Morrison was among the first to approach Serafina's ranch with hat in hand and genuine remorse in his eyes. His cancellation of the bull breeding contract had haunted him throughout the boycott, and his wife had reminded him daily that their prosperity depended on maintaining relationships with successful neighbors. His request to resume business dealings came with an apology that acknowledged his moral failure. Within a week, a steady stream of ranchers, merchants, and community leaders made similar pilgrimages to Serafina's door. The feed store owner offered discounts to compensate for his previous refusal of service. The blacksmith volunteered to prioritize her horseshoeing needs without charge. Even the bank president arrived with proposals for expanded business relationships and investment opportunities. Ryder watched these reversals with a mixture of satisfaction and cynicism that reflected his detective's understanding of human nature. The same people who had participated in systematic harassment now competed to demonstrate their respect and friendship. Their motivations remained primarily self-interested, but the practical effect created the acceptance that Serafina had always deserved. The Western Pacific Railroad sent their regional director to negotiate an exclusive contract that offered premium prices for Serafina's cattle, along with guaranteed transportation for her expanding mining operations. The terms exceeded anything she had received before the boycott, reflecting both the quality of her livestock and the company's desire to associate with her proven integrity. Serafina's land rights advocacy office opened in a converted storefront on Dusty Creek's main street, with Nettie Lewis serving as its first director. The seamstress had demonstrated remarkable organizational skills during the crisis, coordinating community support and managing communications with legal representatives. Her appointment symbolized how the entire struggle had elevated capable people to positions where their talents could benefit everyone. The office's first clients included three Mexican families, whose property claims had been challenged by speculators using tactics similar to Blackwood's failed scheme. Serafina's geological expertise and Ryder's investigative methods quickly established the legitimacy of their ownership, while exposing another network of fraudulent documentation. The success of these early cases established the advocacy office's reputation throughout the territory. Ryder's decision to remain married to Serafina surprised no one who had witnessed their partnership during the legal battles. Their relationship had evolved from contractual obligation to genuine collaboration based on mutual respect and complementary skills. Romance played no role in their bond, but their partnership demonstrated something more valuable than passion. Their new detective agency specialized in property rights protection and fraud investigation, filling a crucial need in the rapidly developing Wyoming territory. Ryder's Pinkerton training, combined with Serafina's technical expertise, created unique capabilities that attracted clients from across the region. Federal marshals regularly consulted them on complex cases involving land disputes and territorial corruption. The harvest festival that autumn transformed Serafina's ranch into a celebration that brought together the entire community in ways that would have been impossible months earlier. Former enemies shared tables with longtime friends, while their children played together without the artificial barriers that adult prejudices had created. The event demonstrated how prosperity and justice could unite people across traditional divisions. Harrington's revelation of his business partnership with Serafina had initially shocked the community, but the economic benefits of their collaboration became obvious as their joint ventures created employment and generated tax revenue throughout the territory. Their success proved that practical cooperation could overcome social prejudices when mutual benefit was clearly demonstrated. The final scene of their remarkable story took place in Serafina's office on a crisp October morning, as she and Ryder reviewed surveyors' maps for a new investigation in Colorado territory. A mining company had been systematically defrauding small property owners using forged geological reports, and territorial officials had requested their assistance in building a federal case. Their partnership had created something neither could have achieved individually. Serafina's scientific expertise provided the technical foundation for exposing fraud, while Ryder's detective skills revealed the criminal networks behind such schemes. Together, they had become formidable advocates for justice and property rights across the expanding American frontier. The wooden chest that had once held Serafina's secret surveys now contained certificates of appreciation from territorial governments, federal law enforcement agencies, and community organizations throughout the region. Each document represented another victory for truth over corruption, and another step toward a society where success was measured by integrity rather than prejudice. Their story had begun with a forced marriage designed to solve immediate financial problems. It had evolved into something far more significant, a demonstration that courage, intelligence, and moral conviction could overcome any obstacle when properly applied. The true wealth they had discovered lay not in land or gold, but in the partnership that made justice possible. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.